The views and opinions expressed here are those of the guests and are not the official position of The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
We believe in God, the Eternal Father.
We believe in the Bible to be the Word of God.
We believe in being honest, true, chaste, benevolent, virtuous.
We believe that through the atonement of Christ, all mankind
We also
is saved
believe the
by
Book of Mormon to be the Word
obedience
of God.
We may say that we follow the admonition of Paul. We believe all things. We hope all things. We have endured many things.
Welcome to Why I Believe on the Mormon Channel. I'm Rick Starr. Today we're joined in the studio by singer Alex Boye. Alex was born in London, converted to the gospel when he was 16. He served a mission, then came back and joined a boy band, but soon decided to use his talents to share the gospel. He moved to Salt Lake, joined the Tabernacle Choir, and has released many inspiring gospel songs. Today we'll be talking with Alex about his conversion story and the experiences he's had throughout his life that have strengthened his testimony. Alex, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks a lot, Rick.
It's great to have you here. Alex, let's start with your youth. You were born in London,
Yep.
1970, to a Nigerian mother.
Yes.
Your father, who you never knew, remained in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Tell us about your childhood, growing up, and what was your religious background as you grew up?
It was next to none, really. You know, I'd always hear my mum singing hymns, like, around the house, and, and she definitely, believed in God. I mean, I remember times where my mum would, I'd come home from school or whatever, and my mum would be in the room, and she'll just be praying for like hours on end. And, I look back and I'm just like, the dedication she had to the Lord was just incredible. And I'd hear some of her prayers, and it was just amazing. If I could pray half the way, the way that my mom would, I'd probably be translated by now. But so I learned a lot about prayer from my mom just by her doing it, not her saying anything about it or talking to me about God or anything, but just by watching her. So anyway, my childhood, my dad, when I was about 2 years old, so my mom, she sent me to Nigeria because at that time my mom and dad were separated, and he moved, back to Nigeria, and he wanted me to be with him, and so an uncle of mine put me on a plane and went over to Nigeria with me, and so I was there till I think I was about 5 or 6. I came back to England, so my dad was probably fed up of me. He was like, I can't handle this. Go back to your mom or something. But I never saw him since. In fact, I just discovered that he died last month. And that was an interesting one because I'd been trying to look for him for years. And then, and I had some interesting experiences where I felt that I needed to seek him out. And it's so interesting, I know that was the Spirit, and all I can say is we just should never, ever, never ignore the Spirit. Because I look back now and I just think, I could have had a chance to seek him out and talk to him, and we could have, maybe did some family history and genealogy and stuff and everything, but I totally ignored it. And then, I found out last month that he'd passed away, and I just thought, oh, man, So I've been trying a lot more to pay attention to what to the voice, the silent voice, because
those little flashes of inspiration,
isn't it? Yeah. And sometimes you think it's just you, and now I look back and I know that that was the Lord that was trying to prompt me, trying to knock into my head and say, Alex, wake up! I've got something I need you to do. So yeah. But anyway, so when I was about 5, I came back to England, and then I stayed with my mom. And my mom had, she worked nights. She had this shift where she worked on the underground. And I thought, I guess in America you call it subway. Right? Yeah. And she worked in the English underground for like 12 years. I only just discovered this, that she would start work about 9 o'clock at night, and she'd get back home at 6 o'clock in the morning. And her job was basically with a whole bunch of people that they would walk the rail lines and pick up trash.
Wow. Underground.
Underground. That, and they had, you know, the lights, the lanterns or the torches or whatever and everything. I mean, you know, I'm thinking about it. There must be rats and just everything down there and just, you know. And she was always sick. And, you know, I look back and I start to realize that now. You know, this is when I'm like 6, 7, 8, 9, you know, 10 years old. And she's doing this. And she's just saving up that money so that I can go to school. You know.
Were you an only child?
I was, no. It was because my mum remarried. And then that didn't work out either. But boy, my mum's had a hard time with men. But anyway, but yeah. So I have like 3 stepsisters, and then one brother. So it was pretty much myself and my little brother that, you know, we pretty much grew up together and back in England. So
And now, is your mother still alive?
my mother's still alive. She lives in London, England. And yeah, she's doing great. And I just spoke to her the other day. In fact, it looks like I'm actually going to surprise her and go. I haven't been back to England for about 6 years. So I spoke to her and I was really excited to tell her, but I decided not to because I'm going to go back home and
surprise her.
Go and surprise her. So
that's
it's
great.
going to be fun.
That's great. Well, you obviously were raised by a very religious woman.
Yes.
Maybe not raised in an organized
Yeah.
religion, but you
Yeah.
had a great example for a
Yes.
mother.
Yeah,
And
I
still
did.
do, it sounds like.
I did.
Now, when you were 16, Alex,
Yeah.
you went to hear a presentation by Mormon missionaries, sister
Yeah.
missionaries.
Yeah.
And I understand that you went, your original reasoning for going was because you wanted the opportunity to maybe chat with some American girls.
So
is that
cute.
right?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, Rick. You know, actually, how it happened is I used to work in McDonald's when I was 16. I used to work in McDonald's, and I was, you know, and I'd save up money for school because I was at a boarding school. So during the vacation times, I'd work in McDonald's. And so anyway, one day there was a guy that worked in McDonald's who I hated with a passion. I hated him so much you wouldn't even imagine, and we did not get along. And the main reason why was because in England, especially like all the young kids, you know, I'm 16, you know, and I loved scrapping. Do you know what scrapping is? It's like a slang. It's not scrapbooking because I don't scrapbook, but everyone thinks that I'm really good at scrapbook. But it's scrapping is a slang for fighting.
Oh, okay.
So everyone, like in England, you know, if someone gets mad, like, you want to scrap, mate? You want to scrap? And
It's
so
like street fighting.
Yeah. Everyone scrapped, you know. In fact, if I didn't scrap, I'd get in a bad mood. And if I did scrap, I'd be in a bad mood. It's kind of like
It's like a
oxymoron.
hobby.
Yeah, it's terrible. So anyway, you know, that's what I love to do. And in McDonald's, where I worked, it was the downtown store in a place called Warren Street, which is Tottenham Court Road, right downtown London. So it was like a really busy area, really small store. And it was just so crazy all the time. People were always stressful and stressed out, you know? And so we always scrapped all the time. In fact, I remember one time, you know, there was a scrap going on, you know, and one of the guys comes downstairs from the, you know, from the cafeteria and says, "There's a scrap." And we'd all just leave the shop floor and just go and see the scrap.
So you'd be in your fast food uniform.
Yeah. And then we'd come back and, you know, after the scrap finished, we'd like, "Oh, sorry, would you like fries with that?" You know, whatever. But anyway, there's a guy that worked there. His name is Aaron Clark Wills. Huge black dude, about 6'4", and as wide as he was tall. And, you know, it was like the weirdest thing. Like, you'd hear him talk. Like a black guy that talks like the Queen, very weird combination. And he had this really just well spoken, you know. And anyway, so I got into this scrap one day, and he sent me home with no pay. Now I had worked 12-hour shift, and on the 12th hour, he caught me scrapping. He picked me up by the scruff of my neck, kicked me out of the store, and he says, "Don't come back until, you know, your next shift." And that's when I just hated him. I hated him so badly. And in fact, not only me, it was other people in the store. They didn't get along with him either. And so one day, you know, we were at the cafeteria, and I said to him, "Look, Aaron, let me give you advice, huh? Let me give you some tips on how to become popular in this store, and everyone will love you. Would you be interested in hearing what I have to say?" And then he said to me, "Well, yes, maybe I might be interested." And I'm like, I just always looked at him really weird because he just talked very strange. But anyway, so I said, "Well, let me tell you what you need to do. when you see us scrapping, just let us get on with it. We're not hurting anyone. Might come away with a couple of black eyes, but you can't tell on me anyway, so it's not hurting anyone. So I said, what do you say? You think this is a good idea? And he looks at me, he looks up in the sky, and he looks at me again and says, well, I'm afraid I can't do that. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't do that? And he says, well, I believe that the power of speech is stronger than the power of the fist, and we must all get along with it. And you can imagine that all the patriotic music in the background getting bigger and bigger, and the trumpets, and he was getting all proud and saying all these things, And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I remember I was saying to him, oh, you must be one of those God people, right? And he says, well, yes. I'm like, what religion are you? Catholic? Protestant? What are you? Mooney? What are you? And I was going over all the religions. He was like, no, 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 no. So finally, I was like, I'll give up. What possibly could I have not said? What religion are you? And then I'll never forget this. He stands up straight. He adjusts his McDonald's tie. And he looks at me with this straight back. And he says, I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, otherwise known as Mormons. And so my little brain is computing and trying to recognize who the heck these people are. Then all of a sudden I was like, oh, okay, all right. And I just ran. I got out of that place and I was not interested. I've heard about you people. Don't want anything to do with you. My mother told me to stay away. So did all my friends. And so
was that wasn't your introduction to the Mormons, because you obviously had some sort of perception.
But it was never good, It was not good at all. And so, he decided to make me a project.
Oh.
I turned into his project, where every week he tried everything to get me to come to church. And I was not interested. He would try and find out all the things I liked. He knew I liked chicken. So one day he came up to me and told me that there's going to be a church activity in the cultural hall which involves chicken. And I'm like, dude, I know what you're trying to do. You just get me some and just bring it outside and then I'll eat some. And so he tried all these things. And then one day he came up to me with this smug look on his face, like this look of victory. And I was getting worried. And I'm like, what is going on in his mind? So he comes and stands in front of me and he says, Alex, might I ask you a question? And I'm like, dude, there's something about this. I don't know what it is. I just felt different. And I'm like, yeah, I was such a brat. Like, what do you want? And he says, well, do you like, then he pauses and then he smirks. Then he says to me, do you like American girls? And so I pause.
It sounds like a setup.
And my eyes light up. And I'm like, dude, what are you talking about, man? I know what you're trying to do. Don't even try it. Where are they? Where are they? Where are they? And I said, why are you asking me if I like American girls? And then he has this look of victory again, And he just like walks off and he just says, well, no reason. And he just disappears. And then I was hating it because I was like, he's got something over me. And I don't know what it is quite, but I know that he's got something over me. And I need to know what it is. So I kept bugging him. And he just had this look of just, I've won, on his face. I'm like, look, this is killing me. What's going on? Why are you asking me this question? Anyway, I remember it was probably a week later, I was going home, and I was really, really tired. And, I just done a 10-hour shift. I'm smelling the grease, And then I head up to my doorstep. I open up the gate and head into my door. And there's these two young girls standing at the doorstep with black badges on. And one of them turns around, and it's like, hi, we're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, And before they even had the chance to finish their introduction, I'm like, yeah, come in. All right, yeah, come in right now. I pushed them literally. I must push them into the house, And so they started teaching me the discussions. And, it was my front room turned into like this museum. They brought out flip charts. They brought out pass-along cards. They brought out posters, flyers, brochures, Book of Mormons, all over the place. Like my house just turned into like this, this church. And so anyway, they had giving me all these presentations and stuff. And, I really wasn't that interested. I was interested in them, but not, not knowing what the deal was at the time. But so anyway, actually, I remember I told them to just wait a second. And they were in the front room. And I said, sisters, can you just wait a second? And I went upstairs to my bedroom and I got on my phone and I call up all my friends from school. And one by one, I'm saying to them, dude, I have got 2 American girls in my house, and they are cute. You need to come over. And my friends are like, are you serious? Shut up. I'm like, no, I'm telling you, they are from America, and you need to come and see them. They're like, no way. Just prove it. I'm like, well, you can come and see them if you want. Are you serious? Yeah. Well, how long are they going to be there for? I'm like, I don't know. And they'd be like, well, just stall them. Make sure they don't go anywhere, okay? Make sure, whatever you do, don't let them, not realizing that they wouldn't leave until I got baptized, right? So anyway, I'm like, well, I don't know how long I can keep them here for, but just hurry up and get here, okay? So I put the phone down. Anyway, after I'd make these, like, plethora of phone calls, I get back downstairs, listening to the sisters talk again, and then finally the doorbell rings, and I get all excited. I'm like, sisters, can you just wait there a second? The door's ringing. So I open up the door, and I kid you not, 15 and 20 of my friends come rushing in. The sisters are looking at each other like, oh, we got baptized today, you know. They were getting all crazy and excited. And so here the sisters were teaching like 15, 20 of us, you know, the gospel. And we're all just sitting there with our legs crossed on the floor, you know, and they've got all these flip charts and everything and stuff. But it started to get a little rowdy, you know, because, you know, these 16-year-old guys, high testosterone, you know what I mean, American girls, right? And so I started feeling really bad, you know, and I said, look, sisters, I'll tell you what, because it was just getting out of control, you know, and I said, I'll tell you what, sisters, I'll stop them from coming, and I was saying this just to be nice, because I wasn't interested. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll stop them from coming, but if you come back tomorrow, I promise I will listen to everything you have to say. Deal? And the sisters were like, yeah, sure. Now, let me back up a second. I used to have, when I was like, this is when I was 16, right, this experience, but when I was about 13, 14, 15, I used to have these really bad nightmares about dying. And it would just scare me. Like, you know, I'd have these dreams where I'd just like turn into a skeleton, and I'd keel over, and then like all the sand kind of less like covers me, and these snakes come out of my eyes, and just, I mean, it was scary. And I used to always ask people, like, you know, what happens after I die? Is that it? Do I just turn into like a skeleton and like nothing after that, you know? And I wanted to ask the question, but I was too scared to ask anyone in case they said, yeah, well, that's it. You're done. You know, nothing else. So I was so scared. So I never talked to anyone about religion or death or anything like that, you know? So anyway, going back to experience, the sisters come back the next day. They start teaching me the gospel. And honestly, Rick, you know, again, I'm still not really paying attention. I'm not really interested in what they have to say. And they're giving me these weird challenges, and I'm not into it, you know, and stuff like that. And so anyway, the sisters could see that I was kind of, you know, despondent, not really into what they had to say. And so, you know, and I could tell, and they knew, you know, and so they, you know, they packed their stuff up, and they got up and, you know, started leaving and heading to the door. And I just had this feeling that this was the last time, you know. And so one of the sisters, they head out to the door, and one of the sisters, she turns back, and she comes up to me, and she says, and she shakes my hand. She says, I want to just thank you for allowing us to come here and share the gospel with you. It's been my greatest dream to be able to do this since I was really, really young. And thank you for letting us, you know, in your beautiful home. And they said, you know, and I just want to just let you know that I'm so grateful that Jesus Christ, you know, that he died on a cross, that after 3 days he was resurrected and he lives again, and that we'll all have the same opportunity, that we'll all live again after we die. And then I'm just like, what did you just say? He said, we'll live again after we die. And so I said, can you come back and sit down? And so they came back and they sat down. And I said, can you show me where it says that in the scriptures? And they showed me, and I said, show me another one. They showed me another one. And I remember saying to it, do you really believe this? I said, do you really 100% believe this, or are you just saying this? And I'll never forget what she said, Sister Thompson. She looked in my eyes and she said, I've come from thousands and thousands of miles from a place called America. And this is the first time I've ever been to England. I don't know anyone. I am scared. I've been here for a week. I don't even know her. And she points to her companion. I don't even know her. We've only known each other for like a few days. I am missing home and everything. And then she started giving me this list of all the things she left behind just to come here. So she says, I left my family. I left my friends. She talks about her education, talks about her college. She talks about, like, her dog and her beautiful car that she gave this cute little pet name to. And then she talked about her boyfriend. And then she started crying. And then she started talking to me all the things that she left behind. And then this is one thing that I'll never forget. And she says to me, but you know what, Alex? Of all the things that I've left behind, nothing comes even close to the importance of what I have come to share with you today. Now, you got to understand, Rick, like, you know, I, up to that point, never met Mormons before, really. I don't think I had. And never really spoken to them. And, you know, I had my own way of life. Even though I was 16, you know, things that I did and things that I believed. Now, one thing I do know is that I'm looking at these two 21-year-olds, okay? And I'm thinking to myself, who talks like that? Like, you see, you got, you know, in the church, we're used to 21-year-olds going on missions and talking in the way they do, females, right?
Mm-hmm. But outside the church.
21-year-old girls that I knew,
much different.
I'm not even going to tell you what they talked about. You know what I mean? It just blew me away. And I'm like, that this girl can just give up so much to come here and share it with little old me, little insignificant me. And I'm thinking to myself, I have to listen to what she has to say. I just have to. Because it's just, it just blew me away, these two, the commitment that these two had. And so I owed them that much to sit and pay attention to everything they had. And then, of course, they laid out the plan of salvation for me in life after death, and now it was over. You know, all my questions, all my unanswered questions were answered. And they didn't even have to ask me any questions. They just went through the whole plan.
So the turning point for you was when you understood the plan of salvation.
Yeah, it was a plan of salvation. That, to me, was like gold. That, to me, was like more than any amounts of earthly goods. It meant more to me than anything that I can ever imagine. Because up to that point, I found something that I believed in. I found something that I knew to be true. I found something that I was 100% on. And that was a huge deal for a 16-year-old in that day, you know, and just all the terrible things that was going on in my life and stuff like that. It was just, I just thanked the Lord so much. I looked up and I was just like, God really does love me. It just made me feel special. It made me feel like that he pointed me out, he singled me out, and he said to the sisters, go and speak to him. Go and take care of Alex. He needs to be taken care of. He needs to hear what he has known all along but has forgotten. So, yeah, 3 weeks later, 3 weeks from when the sisters talked about the plan of salvation, I joined the church.
Was it an easy decision after that, after you understood that?
It was a
very turning point?
It was a very easy decision. No second guessing. No. I went back and I hugged Aaron. He didn't know what the heck was going on. In fact, he baptized me.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he baptized me. This is the person that I hated with a passion. And the person who I ended up loving more than my own father. Because I didn't know my father, you know. So, so it was a very, very easy decision.
Well, you'd mentioned before when Aaron announced that he was LDS to you, you had a perception in your mind about what Mormons were. Yeah. And so what was it that finally, of those, what the sisters taught you, or was it their attitude? What was it for you that overcame that perception of what Mormons were? Yeah, you know, as the more I started talking to them and the more I started learning about them and just feeling of their spirit and their warmth and their character and personalities and the knowledge that they had at 21 years old about God and who he was, I didn't even think about it anymore. I just totally forgot about all the things that I had thought about or that people told me. It was just almost like a clean slate. Every time they were talking to me, slates were being cleaned. all the bad stuff, or it was just being cleaned, and it was just getting cleaner and cleaner and cleaner to the point where I was like, yes, okay, I want joy, I want to be a member of the church now. Take me now to church. Fill that water up and let's go. You know, that's how I was like. I was just so excited, so pumped.
Yeah, it was the best ever thing. And then of course getting to like know more Americans.
Yeah.
You know, I honestly, when I was young, you know, I was just so enthralled with like American television. You know, we had 75%. I don't think a lot of people know this in the US, that 75% of entertainment comes from the US and England. 75%. So, you know, because a lot of times people say, is it a culture shock being here or coming to America? I'm like, no. Because I watched A-Team and, you know, I watched Mr. T and, you know, I know how they spoke, you know. I knew they didn't all have that hairstyle, but, you know. So it was like I'd had that culture in me from when I was just so young. Whereas the other way around, you know, you don't really get that. So, you know, if an American goes to England, it's a culture shock, you know. But it wasn't for me, so.
Well, it's great to hear that it wasn't your interest in America that finally helped you with the decision to join the church. It was the plan of salvation. It was the gospel.
Oh yeah, because that would not have been enough for where I was for what I wanted to know. It wouldn't have been enough. But you know, the fact, just the pure information of who God really is, the fact that He is real, He has a body. You know. That He looks like us, and you know, those things, those simple things that it's easy to just like, oh yeah, well, I've known that from when I was, you know, those things were gold to me. You know?
That's wonderful. For any of you who are just joining us, you're listening to Why I Believe on the Mormon Channel. I'm Rick Starr, and today I have the great pleasure of being joined by singer Alex Boye, and we've just been talking about his childhood growing up in London, and Alex. Talk about the time between you joined the church at 16 years old. Yeah. You decided to go on a mission.
Yes, sir.
At 19, I presume.
Yeah, I went a bit late.
Okay.
Because I think I was like, I went when I was 21. I kind of had I think I call it the Zion Babylon syndrome, where I had one foot in Zion and one foot in Babylon. And I was just bouncing in from both of them, you know, and I just couldn't, you know, when Aaron had left to go on his mission, it was, I felt like I was just living off his testimony. I mean, I look back now, and I was kind of just still shaky, and, you know, I didn't denounce anything or reject anything, but I just didn't have the, I didn't have the, I don't know what you call it, just the stick-to-itiveness or whatever you call it, to keep going to church by myself every single week.
Well, you were the only member in your home.
Yeah, I was the only one, and my mom was, she didn't really like it. Although when I joined, my mom was still in Nigeria at the time.
Oh, really?
When I joined the church, my mom, when I was 11, my mom, she told me that she was going to Nigeria for about 3 weeks, and she had met, you know, someone there, and, you know, she wanted to see how it was going to go, and so anyway, come to find out that she was there for 8 years, and so I was in boarding school for that amount of time for 8 years, and so, you know, so she'd come back when I was about 18. I joined the church when I was 16, so I was living with my uncle, you know, and I loved him. You know, and he did the best he could with me, but, you know, he drank, he smoked, and he was just, you know, every week, you know, we had this, it was like this ritual for me where I would have to go out and buy him alcohol, like every week, so that he can, you know, hang out with his friends and all that type of stuff. That was like my job. You know, we hardly ever spoke until like the weekend, and he'd give me this list. And this list was like, you know, stuff that I had to go and buy in the liquor store. I had to go buy tea and then coffee and then, you know, some liquor and, you know, and cigarettes. And it's kind of funny. A week after I joined the church, I was homeless. What happened was I had gone back, I went back home. I mean, after like being baptized, and I was at home, you know, and that weekend, the next weekend came, and it was just like a natural thing where the weekend came, and there was like the list, the shopping list of what I had to get. It was on the counter, so I picked it up because the money's on it, and I had to automatically just went to the liquor store to like buy all this stuff. And then I remember just as I was heading to the store, and I just stopped, and I turned back around and I went home, and he saw that my uncle saw that I was empty-handed. He was like, "Where's the stuff?" I remember saying to him, and it's probably the hardest thing that I'd ever said. I said, I can't do this anymore. it's funny, it's how ironic how everything that was on the shopping list was against the word of wisdom. Everything, alcohol, tea, coffee, the whole thing.
And you were the one who had to go buy it.
Yeah. And so I said to him, I can't do this anymore. And he said, why? And boy, I was scared. But I picked up myself and I straightened my tie. And I said, I cannot, because I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, otherwise known as Mormons. And I remember he just went silent, and after a couple of weeks, we just didn't get on, and I could tell that he was just not happy, and he'd said stuff to like our friends and other people, and all these rumors started flying around about what I did now that I was a Mormon, and all these strange things, the things that I, was hearing before I joined,
all the perceptions.
All the negative perceptions. And so that became tough. And then, one day he just said, he just got my suitcase and put it outside the door, and he says, don't come back. And I remember thinking, well, what am I going to do? Where am I going to stay? I'm 16 years old, He says, I don't care. Maybe those people at the church, they'll help you. You go find them. Maybe they can save you. And I remember that night walking around London. I had my T-shirt on. I had like flip-flops, pair of jeans with holes in. Yeah, they used to be fashionable, not when it's cold. But anyway, it was like September and it was freezing. And I was walking around the parking lot just by my place, where I was living, and I just had tears in my eyes, and I was just crying. And I remember thinking to myself, wait a minute, I've just joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. My life should be better. It's worse. And I remember like walking around. I found this white van. It was all rusted and everything. And I opened the door and I sat in it and I just cried. And I remember thinking to myself, just looking up and just praying and saying, Heavenly Father, I don't understand. Help me to understand why I'm in this situation right now, where I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing. I know I'm doing the right thing, but my life is just like terrible. This is not what I signed up for. This is not what it's supposed to be. This is not how my life was supposed to be. Where everyone hates me, nobody wants to hang out with me. Now I'm homeless. I got no money. And I remember just like, and okay, don't ever be mad with the Lord. Oh my gosh. I was young in years and in my church experience. And, I remember I had the scriptures in my hand, and it was the very same scriptures that the sisters had given me, and they had their testimonies in. And I literally was clutching it. In fact, I remember the first night I was in that white van, and it was freezing, it was snowing, and I just cried my eyes out. I had the scriptures in my hand. And, those scriptures became like my best friend. Those scriptures became my mum, my dad, my confidant, my friend, my advisor, everything. It became like just, that scripture talks about how, about hungering and thirsting after righteousness. I can honestly say that I believe that I felt that. Because it was like I hung on every single word that was in the book, because I had nothing else. I had nothing else to turn to. And I remember just reading it and crying and complaining and screaming and asking why and moaning and complaining and crying. And then I remember turning, and everyone's had that experience where you open up the book and blam, it's right there. Something that is right there for you. It's got your name on it, your first, your middle, and your last name. And mine, it just turned straight to the 122nd section of Doctrine and Covenants. And this is where, Joseph Smith, he was at Liberty Jail. And I remember, later on in years, I'd read up about some of the background behind Joseph Smith being in Liberty Jail, and and going to Jackson County, Missouri, and seeing where he actually was, and hearing the stories about how, the fact that Joseph Smith, when he was in jail, he was laying in the restroom, meaning there wasn't a restroom, a separate place you could go to. That's where he was, and this is where he received the revelation of probably one of the most powerful scriptures about trials and tribulation. And so here I am reading it, and it's like got my name on it, and it says, And then, there's the part where it talks about if thou art accused with all manner of false accusations, which I was. And in fact, people were saying that I was gay and that people at the church are doing all these bad secret things, and it was, all this stuff. And so I felt that. And if thy enemies fall upon thee, if they tear thee from the society of thy father, and then it goes on, it talks about how, if thou should be cast into the pit or in the hands of murderers, if the sentence of death pass upon thee, if thou be cast into the deep. And it's talking about if these terrible things happen to you, all right, then right here it says, then it says, now know thou, my son, Alex Boye, that all these things shall give thee experience and shall be for thy good. And I remember after reading that, and I was like, good? Good? That's not good. Like having an ice cream with like bits of, graham crackers and stuff like that. That's good. With some chocolate. Mama's cooking chicken. That's good. This is not good. And I remember just like screaming again and saying to the Lord, this is, what is this? This is, it's ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. And I remember just thinking to myself, what am I had to repent. I started to feel the Lord helping me to understand. And I started to realize that, isn't it interesting that what we see as being good, what human beings see as being good, is very different to what God sees as being good. Like our version is good. Good for me is when I pray and ask for a Ferrari and I get one. But when the Lord, his version of good is, I think of Jesus Christ. Bleeding and dying and suffering and being scourged and hanging on the cross and the atonement that he bled at every pore at the atonement, the Garden of Gethsemane, at one moment, atonement. At one moment, he suffered for every single one of us. And that very moment. And I remember thinking, who do I think I am to be able to complain about my lot, about what's going on in my life? When I look at Joseph Smith, when I look at Paul, when I look at, John the Baptist, when I look at, the Savior himself and see the suffering they went through. Who do I think I am when I complain about my lot, about what I'm going through? I'm nothing. I'm nobody without the Lord. Nothing. I'm just a speck. Who do I think I am? And I started to realize, wait a minute, this is making me stronger than I'd ever been before. And I remember people would always comment, how old are you again? You're 16? You act like you're 25, Because I just those things just strengthened me, and it gave me so much confidence, more confidence about who I am, and not being afraid of things anymore. And no matter how bad it gets, that I can still look up to the sky and say, I have someone that's got my back. Who has your back? Do you know? I know who's behind me. I know who's pushing me forward. I know who's strengthening me. I know who's helping me. And that gave me so much strength to the fact that when I was in boarding school on my own, had, no one to take care of me, or when I was had 3 different foster parents and, and some of them weren't the best and stuff like that, I was always looking forward to the future. I was always looking at the future. I wasn't looking at where I was or my circumstances right now. I always look forward knowing that it can be better. It's almost like, in the scriptures where, you've got prophets in the Book of Mormon that were saying, for unto us a child is given, for unto us a child is born. They were acting as if it already happened. This was like 500 years before Christ arrived, and they were talking as if he was already here. And so I realized that was an incredible thing with us as members of the church, and knowing who owns us, that we can always look forward to a better day. We can always look forward to something that we're excited about. That it's not always going to be like this. If people are suffering, if people are struggling, there are people in this world, even in the church, one-parent families, or, the father's into pornography, or mother's doesn't know where she's going to get her next, money from to pay the rent because, or the dad who thinks, well, I don't think I'm a worthy priesthood holder because I can't even afford to put money on my kid's table and stuff like that. Every situation that you can imagine, and the Lord knew that, and He knows that, and He tells us, He tells us that whenever we think that we can't do things, let's think about what he says, that I can do all things in Christ, which strengthens me. And so for many, many times, I just got out of myself and realized, wait a minute, whenever I thought I couldn't do this, I was right. But whenever I thought, wait a minute, with the Lord, I can do this and more, I was also right. And, and a lot of times is we walk around speaking defeat to ourselves so much, especially in the church. We walk around, we should be the happiest people on the face of this earth, knowing what we have. Do you know the fact that the Lord, whatever he professes, happens? One of my favorite scriptures is in 2 Nephi 24:24. And there's a part right here where he simply says, and this is incredible, this just blows me away, where he just simply says, surely as I have thought, so shall it come to pass. And as I have purposed, so shall it stand. So the Lord's saying, whatever I think about, it's going to happen. Whatever I've purposed, saying, I'm going to make sure that this happens, it happens. It's like, that's the power he has. The fact that he created this world just by speaking it. Right at the beginning of Genesis, it says, and the word was good. The word was God. Everything that he said, he spoke. And it was created. Well, if we are God's in embryo, if we are going to inherit the things that he has, then isn't it right that he must train us to be able to prepare ourselves to be able to do those things, to create, to help create kingdoms and worlds with our spouses, with our, wives, and having this incredible priesthood. And sometimes it's like we forget who we are, man. The men have the same priesthood that the Lord used to create this world by just speaking it. Well, what is it that we can do then? And, oh my gosh, Satan has got this huge hold on us where he just says to us, you can't do anything. And we believe it. And I've stopped doing that now, because it doesn't do me any good. And it doesn't do any of us any good. Once we realize and recognize who we are and what we stand for and who's got our back, man, we don't need to be depressed for long.
That is so true.
We don't need to be down for long. We don't need to think that anything that is in this world that's worth having, we don't need to believe that we can't have it or that we don't deserve it, because he has that and more. When the Lord is saying, prove to me now herewith to see if I will not open up the windows of heaven, that it shall not be room enough to receive it. What's he trying to say? He's not lying. He's saying that. He's like, test him, prove him, follow his word. And he's going to give us, we will be in situations that we could never imagine, and accomplish stuff that we can never imagine, because it's not us that's accomplishing it, it's him. And, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to be a member of a church, of a faith that believes this. I'm so grateful to be a member of the Lord's church that helps me to realize who I really am, and what I can really accomplish, with my temple covenants that I have in my the weakest state, that I can still do so much. What an honor it is, and what a blessing it is for us to have that. I'm so grateful. I know that it's true. I know that, the Book of Mormon, the scriptures, has literally saved my life. It saved my life in that white van. It turned me around and made me realize that I need to understand a little bit more about what God sees as being good and not what I see as being good. And sometimes I forget, but when I remember, life's always better for me. Always better for me. When I forget, it gets worse.
Well, now that was when you were 16.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about how did things resolve after that? Did you have a lot of Mormon friends that you could turn to, and then the decision that you had to go on a mission? Tell a little bit about your mission.
Yeah, I think after a while, I started realizing that there were members, because I didn't know how it worked. I didn't know that you could go to church and talk to people about problems you had and stuff like that. I was grown up to believe that you take care of your own problems, that you worry about your own problems, that you don't need to share it or tell people. That's kind of how I grew up in my culture. And so I was always afraid of telling people. But finally, when I'm opening up and first realizing that there are other people in worse situations than I am, that overcame, many things. And many of my friends and people in church, and just them helping, and my bishop, and just giving me encouragement and words and assistance and help. And so, it was a slow process, but I started realizing that, all was not lost, and that again I started looking forward and envisioning the future, knowing what I know and realizing that people might, at the age of 19 who are male, they served missions. And I remember thinking how awesome that would be, to do what the sisters did for me. And so, it was a tough situation. I lived on my own. I had my own apartment at 17, and just going to work and school and pretty much just I felt like I felt like I was alone, but at the same time I had good friends in the church that were very, very supportive. So, but I got into music probably when I was about 18, 19, and it kind of took me off track. I started, it was like because music became my escape. And so it came like my joy, something I found that was becoming helping me to take my mind off, just the things that I was going through. And of course, Satan will use that tool and to make it the only thing in your life,
The tool of music.
Yeah, isn't it kind of interesting how, the Lord can use whatever the Lord uses to make us better. Satan can use the same thing to make us worse. Think about the law of chastity, and what it's about, what it really is about, when, in the right place, with the right person at the right time, in the right situations. But then, we can use it in the wrong place, in the wrong situations, at the wrong times, and it can be the worst, the worst thing, for us. So
it turns it around.
Yeah, it turns around. So that's what music was for me. It became a blessing, and all of a sudden it became a curse because I was doing the wrong type of music, and I was using it, in the wrong way, and so I learned that other side, and I can tell you one thing: rap music is the worst type of music that you could listen to. And I'm saying 99.9% of rap music is the worst type of music you can listen to, and you can't argue with me because I'm a black man. But no, seriously. And the reason why I say that is because it almost stopped me from going on a mission. It will wipe the spirit clean out of your presence before the first chorus even starts.
If you let it.
If you let it, if you're listening to it. And, so that's one of the big things that I talk to, youth about. And, that's not the only, there's other styles of music. I think, was it Boyd K. Packer that says that there is good and bad in every style of music, but it's up to us to find it. And sometimes we just let whatever it is, the trends of the day or the great songs of the day, just because it's famous and it's popular, so we think that we need to listen to it because if we don't, we're not cool type thing, That's Satan's biggest tool. He'll tell you, you know what I mean? If you're not cool, if you're not doing this type of thing or that type of thing, And
now, were you singing at that point, or did you start singing on your mission? When was
I was singing for a little bit of that. I was more like listening to music, and I was a dancer and dancing and doing all. I was like in a dance agency where you do music for music videos and dancing for music videos. A whole bunch of my friends and stuff like that. I didn't really start singing until my mission. I think I sang a little bit before that, but when I made decisions to go on my mission, and it was interesting when Aaron came back from his mission, I wasn't supposed to be home. Our plan was that he was going to go on his mission, and before his 2 years were up, I would be gone. And he came back off his mission, and I was at his homecoming, and I was like, what the heck? What have I been doing for 2 years? And I remember he came up to me afterwards and says, Alex, he said the same thing. So, what have you been doing for the last 2 years? I was stumped. I couldn't tell him anything. I was going to tell him how cool I was, doing all these dance videos and just having fun and making some good money and stuff like that and this and that. But none of that doesn't, for him, that doesn't wash. None of that impresses him. And so that was when I was like, Alex, I got to go on a mission. I got to do this. I mean, and so that's why I went a little late. While I was serving my mission, there was an experience. It was pretty early in my mission where I don't know how it started, whether it was a baptism that was going on, and I think that like the missionaries that were supposed to sing were called elsewhere or something, and then the person who was supposed to sing couldn't make it, and then I volunteered myself. And I remember I was at a baptism and I sang. I can't remember what the song it was, but I sang this song at a baptism, and honestly, oh my gosh, up to that point I was just singing songs, you know. Mm-hmm. And this was the first time I ever sung a song and felt the Spirit. Now you got to realize, like, that was very foreign to me. And I was just like looking around. I was singing and people were crying and I was crying, and I was looking around like at my companion like, what's going on here? Because I'd never felt that before. I'd never felt that before. And it was the most incredible feeling. Like, so not only was I singing, but I was using my words and melodies, and I was feeling something, and other people were being affected. And I was just like, this is incredible. And I started doing more of it. And then to the point where my mission president was like sending me like to zone conferences and all these places, and he'd go, I was like this traveling missionary singing guy, you know. In fact, when I'd be with knocking doors with my companion, you know, I would knock on the door would open, and I'd start singing and stuff, you know. And I just found this passion of just singing like songs about Christ. And it was like amazing. It was changing me. It was cleansing me. And I remember the last day of my mission president, he said to me, you know, I had, you know, the last interview that you have with your mission president, where he tells you, you know, make sure you go home and get a job, get an education, get married, you know. And he told me all these things. But on top of that, he says, you know, maybe you should consider doing something with music when you get home. And I remember thinking, you know, didn't really know what that meant, you know, but I went home, and so I started, I got together with some friends, you know, and got into a boy band.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that.
I don't know if that's what it meant, but...
Because that's a little different than probably the power of music that you experienced on your mission.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the boy band experience that you had, and ultimately why did you decide that wasn't for you?
Yeah.
What changed your mind?
That was another gradual thing that I ended up being in. You know, I actually, the way it started was I used to go to all these church dances, and I'd love dancing. And so, you know, it was like my favorite thing, you know. And I got a lot of attention, you know, of course, so, you know, you know, you're going to like that, you know, especially when the sisters are, you know, getting all crazy and stuff. And, you know, and it's like, hey, you're so good, such a good dancer. And, you know, we like that kind of stuff. I'm not going to lie. So anyway, I remember I was at a dance, and one of my friends, he was kind of like less active. And I think it was like the bishop was like inviting him to come and to keep him active was to come and DJ at the dances, you know. So he was like a really good DJ, and it like got really popular, all these dances, to the point where even like non-members came to our church dances. We'd have it at this university like downtown, you know. It was amazing, and it got so big. And so, like, we started having, like, people performing during the church dances, you know? And so I'd be singing and dancing and stuff, and then I think there was, like, 3 guys that got up on stage, and they started dancing with me and singing, and we just became friends. And I come to find out that it was the DJ, who was Stephen, who was the one that was less active. He brought his 2 non-member friends with him. So we all became, like, really close friends. So we set up this band together. And we started singing and dancing, like all these church dances and stuff. And then we entered this contest at one of the biggest radio stations in London. And it's kind of like a karaoke contest, and the prize was actually a recording contract. And we came 3rd. And the person who won actually forfeited his prize. I don't know if he's disqualified or something like that. So they didn't even go to the second person. They went straight to us. And they said, well, we want to give you this first prize. I was like, you kidding? They're like, no way. And so we ended up, we turned up at the recording record company. Come to find out, it was like a really small room with a fax machine and an 8-track studio and a telephone. But you know what? It was a good start for us. And I started learning. I started writing songs and going in the studio. Like, I could go in at any time I wanted and just write. And I was writing songs. I was writing just hundreds of songs. They were all very, very bad songs. They were terrible. But it was like I was doing trial and error and getting better and better, and I wasn't wasting anyone's money. You know, it was great. I could go in the studio, put the headphones on, write these songs. And then the way that we'd practice to see if these songs were working is we'd go to our church dances and sing the songs. And if the sisters were screaming, then we would like, that's a good song.
Good
if
feedback.
they weren't, if they weren't, we're like, scrap that song. So, you know, our LDS sisters were like, you know, great. They were helping us out. And then we started getting better and better and better. And then, you know, that radio station called us up again, and we started doing like tours on all these radio stations, live tours all over England. And then we come to find out that like they'd have all these huge acts that they'd fly in from America, and we'd be opening up for them. And like we had, you know, we were like nobody, and all the other English artists were like, how in the heck are you getting to like open up for all these people? We're like, we don't know, you know. Then we found a manager, and well, actually like 16, 20 managers later, because we got ripped off by all of them. But, you know, we found one manager, and he was like, you know, I want to introduce you to some people. You guys need to get a recording contract. I was like, well, how'd you do that? He says, well, you know, he gave us an address and told us to meet there, and, you know, and then we ended up going into this huge building downtown, and we ended up at Universal Records, and they gave us a recording contract. And so anyway, we started touring, and in '97, we had our first hit. So, and then things just started going, you know, crazy. But I had an experience, and I don't know if you've got time for this, but do you have time? I know we've got to wrap up soon.
Yeah, no, go ahead, share that with us.
Well, this was an experience that really became a very, very strong testimony builder for me about music and how we use music. Now, I was on the other end where I was making the music that people were listening to. Now, this was after my mission and everything, and I remember we got a phone call and from my manager, really excited, because he says, you know, we have been given this song to record. And the song was written by a very famous songwriter, and he had huge hits with European artists and American artists. So basically what that means is it doesn't matter how bad this song is, it will become popular because of who it was that produced it, right? So to get to that situation was like amazing. We were so excited, and they gave us the address of the studio to turn up to. And so I turn up at the studio, they give me the lyrics of the song and everything. Then I remember I get in a vocal booth and I put it on because I was like the lead singer guy, you know? And so I put the headphones on, and the song, I'm looking at the words, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. I'm reading these words and I'm like, I cannot even say these words, let alone sing it. I mean, it was so inappropriate that like I all I could say is I was just so I went from just like 10 of excitement to like -10 of just like disappointment. And of course, I was the only one. Everyone else was happy because, you know. Yeah.
But you were feeling something.
I felt something, and I was just like, I know I'm not supposed to, I can't sing the song. And then, so now I've got these two voices. You know those cartoons where you got like the angel on one side of your head, and you got like the imp, and they're talking to you, right? You know? And that's what I had. I had this like, you know, this like the good voice was like, now you know who you are. You know, the promises and the covenants that you made. The other side's like, covenants, schmovenants, man. You know how much money you can make? You could be rich. Your mama's poor. Your family's poor. You can get out of poverty and blah, blah, blah. So, you know, I got these two voices, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, man. And then so I decided to meet them both in the middle.
Is that a compromise?
Yes, right? And that, you know, what's that scripture that says a double-minded man is unstable in his ways, right? There's no such thing in the church, right? It's either black or white. There's no gray area, you know? But, of course, I made up this gray area. You know, maybe, you know, if I sing it really quickly, or, you know, maybe no one really pays attention to lyrics anyway. So, you know, I think it'll be okay. And, you know, this is a great opportunity for me. Let's face it, you know, that kind of stuff. And so anyway, I was just fighting with myself in this recording booth. And I just went out, and I asked if I could take a break, and I went to the restroom. And I got down on my knees in this restroom, and I started praying. And the thing is, I look back now, and I'm like, I knew I didn't need to pray. I know what I'm supposed to do, right? Mm-hmm. You know. There's some things you don't need to pray about. It's like a man that is able-bodied, that has the priesthood, that says, Heavenly Father, shall I go on a mission? There are some things that you don't need to pray about.
The answer's already been there.
Yes, they're commandments, right? So anyway, I was praying, and stuff. And I guess what I was really, really praying for was courage. Praying for courage. Because, you got to realize I was in this recording studio, just signed to Universal Records, one of the third largest record company in the world at the time. And we were having the biggest opportunity placed in front of us. And I was saying I don't want it, And so anyway, I was just praying for courage. I came back out, and I remember putting the headphones back on, and I'm just like, for some reason, I just kind of just started compromising again. And so I was just about to sing the song. The producer's like, you ready? I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. Presses play, music starts. And before I open my mouth, I have this worst feeling come over me, like I've committed the most heinous sin ever on the face of the planet. Like my conscience, seriously, it was just like eating away at me. And I remember just thinking, I put the headphones down, and the producer's like, what's wrong? I says, I can't do this. He says, what? I says, I can't sing this song. I says, I don't talk like this, so I can't sing it. And then the manager, of course, he was getting nervous, you know what I mean? Because they paid for all the studio time, a lot of money. It's one of the best studios, top technology and everything. So we weren't wasting the time. And so my manager, he kind of takes me outside, away from everyone so it doesn't cause a scene. And I could tell he was so frustrated. He was like, what is wrong with you? What is your problem? This was the clean version, right? And I'm like, I can't sing this song. He's like, what? And he looks at me and says, do you know how many people would cut their right arm off to be in your situation right now? Do you know how many people I could replace you just like that? So do you know how many people would love to be in your situation? Do you know how many things that you can have? Do you know how many girls you can get and the drugs that you can get and all these things that you can have, anything that you want? And I remember thinking to myself, who is really speaking here? His head's shrinking and getting smaller and smaller. And I'm like, who is really talking to me here? And I remember thinking to myself, no, I'm not going to do this. He says, well, get out. Don't come back. In fact, we're going to replace you, find a new lead singer. There are plenty of people that can do what you're doing. You're not very good anyway. Get out. So, again, I had the experience of being tossed out. And, I remember going home and I was just crying my eyes out. And I just started to think of things that I could have done. And I looked back and I got home and I was like, you know what? There's nothing that I could have done that would have changed the situation unless, if I do it or I don't do it. And I remember, again, going back to that experience. Here am I trying to do what's right. And now I'm going through like the worst experience. This is not what I signed up for. And I remember I'm having that white van experience again. And I remember thinking to myself, wait a minute. Something good always comes out of this. Think of it, 122nd section. Something good. It's for your good. And good always comes out of it, of those situations of trials. And so I remember just forgetting about it and I thought my career was set, So I go back home, I'm going to church, and I was just depressed. I turn on the TV and guess what I see? I see my friends singing the song, in the charts and everything, doing really well. Thank you very much. And here I am trying to do what's right, going to church, had my calling, trying to be a good kid, and I was depressed. And those guys were having fun. And I was thinking to myself, Dad, why is it like that? This doesn't make sense. And so, of course, here's the thing. And I just thought, but you know what? However I feel, I'm sticking with this. Because I want to do what's right. And it was tough. I'm not saying I was doing it with a smile on my face, But anyway, I think it was a couple of months later, I get this phone call just out of the blue. My mum says, phone for you, And so I get on the phone, and it's my manager. And I'm just like, whoa, And he's kind of got this kind of slow kind of form of speech, just real, one word, kind kind of asking if I'm okay and how's everything. And I'm like, how do you think, you know? And he says, look, listen, the reason why I called you is because it's not working out with our lead singer, and we want you to come back. And I remember, and it's like, and now I know the reason why I know you don't want to sing that song. And so here's what we're going to do, okay? We can give you that song, and you can change it to however you want. Now, Rick, you got to realize that in this day, like when a songwriter has written a song and it's been published, you cannot change that song. It is not, that's like, no, you don't do that.
Yeah,
you have to get permission. It's a big no-no. And so here they are telling me, little old me, you can change the song to however you want. I cleaned up that song like soap. And here's the thing.
Good for you.
The very week that song was released, we did a music video for it and everything. It was released and it went top 10 in 15 European countries, selling 500,000 copies. Now, this is one thing I want to tell people. If you follow the Lord's commandments, you will be blessed. I don't care what it is that you're doing. And what I'm saying simply is that wherever you're at, if we do not compromise and we follow the Lord's commandments, he will bless us immensely once he has seen that we don't care what we lose, because what we gain from him is much more than what we lose. And I can honestly stand with my right hand to the square and say to everyone, I know that that song became successful because of that decision that I made. Now, the other guys are not members of the church. Never even told them anything about that. They'll probably never even know up to this day. But I know the real reason why that happened, because the Lord told me. He told me that. And that's been with me forever. And that's one of the things I always love to talk to the youth about. You know, it's not, the Lord's not saying you're going to be famous just because you follow his commandments, but you will be blessed. You will be blessed if you stay true. Because, you know, you go to school, they want to tell you to take a drink or tell you to smoke or tell you to do this or do that, or you're going to date some non-member girl because she's really cute and, you know, she's really, like, you know, not very modest in her dress, but she's really beautiful. It's going to make you look really cool when you go to school. You know, when we follow the commandments, okay, we will be blessed immensely. And that was a big testimony to me, and I'm glad I had that experience. And I'm so grateful for it because it's been with me ever since. Yeah.
For any of you who are just joining us, we are speaking with Alex Boye today on Why I Believe, and it's been great to hear from you, Alex. You've talked a lot about the power of music in your life.
Yeah.
And you had a lot of success in the music business. But there was something that happened to you that changed you. You eventually quit the boy band, the music business.
Yeah.
In that regard, and you had some sort of a dream or experience that changed your life or helped you make a decision. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, there was two experiences that really changed it. I was, and you know, I can honestly say, I mean, the experience I had in the music industry was incredible and has been incredible, and it still is. So I haven't left the industry, but I've just taken a different direction. That's how I see it. But you know, the interesting thing is that so I was in Berlin, in Germany, and I had this experience where we just finished doing this show. It was like 60,000 people at the show. There was all these big acts, and we were one of the ones that were on the bill. And there was 11 million people watching this show. You know, it was an amazing experience. We just finished, and I remember I was heading back to the hotel room, you know, and as I was heading to the hotel room, the people next door, there were some other artists. They were like, hey, come, we're having a celebration and everything. Do you want to come? I was like, yeah, sure. So I turned up. This is like the room next door to me, you know, and I go in there, and there's just this table just full of cocaine and just, you know, all kinds of things. And I remember just like standing there and looking around and thinking to myself, I know that this is not what my mission president meant when he said, when I get home, I should consider doing music. And right there and then, it just dawned on me. It just hit me so hard. And so when I called up my manager and I said, I can't do this anymore. And I told him I'm done. And he gave me that spiel again, you know, of what I'm missing out on and everything. And I said, I know, but I can't afford not to do this. And So I left the group, and it was tough because those guys were my brothers, you know. We lived in and out of each other's pockets for like 7 odd years. We're best friends, you know, and it was hard, and it was hard on them. It was, and you know, I know they hated me for a long time, many years, and because of that decision that I made, and I still look back and you know, and just wishing that it was different, but that's what it was, and so anyway, I left the group, and I went back home, and I was back at church because I was always on tour. I was always on the road, so I was hardly ever at church. So I turned up at church, and I was given a calling, you know, and I was like Sunday school president, and you know, again, you know, I was kind of wondering what I was going to do with my life. And I remember that night I had this dream, and in the dream I was running away from something, and this voice, this guy, he told me, he pointed to a place, and he says, if you hang out here, if you hide here, you'll be safe. And I said, okay. And so I listened, and then I ran to this place where he told me to hide, and it was like I was like knee deep in like a lake, or waist deep. And I remember tasting the lake, and the lake tasted salty. I remember when I woke up that next morning, I was like, Salt Lake. That's where I'm supposed to be. That's where I'm supposed to be. That's where the Lord wants me to be. So I packed up my bags, got rid of my apartment, got rid of all my possessions. I told my friends goodbye. That my ward had a huge party for me, and I turned up in Salt Lake. And
what year was that?
This was in '99. I had nothing. I came over with like $20, the like temporary visa, no driver's license. Hardly knew anyone. I knew a few people, like from my mission and stuff like that. And yeah, so I came out here, and I was out here in Utah, and I struggled, you know, because I didn't know what I was doing. You know, should I go to school? Should I do this, do that? And then, you know, I started talking to. I remember for a few years I was out here, and almost every month I was about to buy a ticket to go back to England, because I was, everything that I tried to do just failed. And I was just like, well, maybe I'm not supposed to be here, you know. And every time I'd go back to England, where it was easier, and it was easier to get a job and that type of stuff, because, you know, I didn't have to get a work visa or all that type of stuff, or go through all those loopholes. It was easier for me, but I felt like I wasn't supposed to be there. Then I'd get back to Utah, where it was like really, really tough, but I had this strong feeling that I was supposed to be there. So I had this feeling of peace. I'd go home, everything was easy, but I'd get this uncomfortable feeling. I'd come back to the U.S., everything was hard, but I'd get this peaceful feeling. Kind of like an oxymoron, you know? But, you know, I decided to just follow that peaceful feeling, no matter how good or bad things were getting. And so it was a few years later, I was venting to a friend of mine about music, about the power of music. And I think I was just talking about how, you know, just we're losing our kids to this music, to different types, whether it's rock, whether it's rap or whatever. And, you know, and it's bringing a bad spirit to their lives and making them rebellious, and, you know, it's stopping them from going on missions and stuff like that. And my friend was just like, well, you know, what can we do about this? And I'm like, well, it's all in the Strength of Youth pamphlet, you know. But I remember saying, but specifically, let me tell you some things that support the Strength of Youth pamphlet that I've learned that's really helped me. And so he was like, I talked to him, and he's like, can you come and talk to my young men about that? I was like, yeah, sure. And I did that, and then the next week I got a phone call. Hey, I heard you speak about music to the young men at so-and-so ward. Can you come to my ward and come and do it? I said, yeah, sure. And then I getting phone calls. Then I started getting phone calls every week. I was doing like 5-6 firesides, sometimes a week, about just music and the power of music and how it affects our thoughts, our personalities, our character, our spirituality, for good or for bad. And then all of a sudden, and I would go to do these firesides, and I'd sing at it. Then so I started doing this thing where it was like motivational music, singing and talking about all the things I learned about it. And then it just started going
kind
crazy.
Of snowballed
then people that. Then I started going out of the country, out of state. Then I started doing youth stuff and some EFY stuff and this and that. And I was just like, wow, this is what the Lord, this is what he planned for me. And then I started doing music and selling my music, because people started to know about, from the firesides and from all that stuff, and they'd go and buy, my music. And it was just like everything had turned around. I was doing music again, that I was using it to be able to, help strengthen people, and including myself. And I was doing music, the type of music that I did when I was on my mission, and feeling the Spirit again, like how I did on my music, and knowing that I was doing exactly what my mission president has suggested now, that I was on that track. And it felt good. I didn't have the fame, and all that notoriety, all that kind of stuff that I used to have, but I was happy, and I was content. And things have just been incredible, since then. And, of course, getting a chance to be in the choir, which I never ever imagined I would be. It's just
with the Tabernacle Choir.
Yes. Yeah. It's just been an amazing ride. Yeah.
It's so wonderful that you've taken that power of music, and you saw both sides of it, and you've ended up on the side of really teaching that it's that it's power for good.
Yeah.
That is wonderful. Alex, at some point, either when you were investigating the church or after you joined the church, you must have realized that there was a time in church history when the priesthood wasn't extended to all male members of the church. What were your thoughts when you realized that, when you found that out? And share with us a little bit about what your thoughts are now.
Well, I didn't find out about this until my mission.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Back in England, it wasn't a thing that was talked about that much. The civil rights movement, in America, was something that is documented and everybody knows about. But in England, nobody knows really, about it. So there was just things that were just, in fact, where I was from, my bishop was black, my stake president, black, my home teachers, black. So
this
we
was
never
in England?
Yeah, this was in England.
Okay.
In some of the wards, like in North London ward, Wandsworth ward, you've got Africans and Jamaicans and, and so it wasn't a thing that we really, just wasn't an issue. But when I came to the States, how it happened, it was when I was on my mission. Now, I served in England Bristol mission, but there was it was my first greenie area, and it was giving away Book of Mormons at this shopping mall. And there was a guy that's just at the corner of my eye. I felt really uncomfortable with him. And he came up and he started speaking to me, and he said, did you know that your people, weren't allowed to have the priesthood? And he went through the whole history and everything, and of course, he was like, and I'm like, well, I knew that, which I didn't. I totally barefaced lied. I was like, oh yeah, I knew that. And I remember I started thinking about it, and as I was going home back to our apartment, with my, with my companion, I remember saying to him, what was that about, And so I he told me a little bit about it, as much as he knew. And so I remember one thing I did say to him, when he said, so why is it, if you know about all these things, how can you be a member of the church? How can you be a black member of the church walking around with that badge representing the church where they don't represent you? And I said, well, I know what you're trying to do, but it's too late because I'm already converted. And that's how I left it, and I walked off. And then, so I went home, and I remember asking my companion that question, And I remember we talked about it for a bit, and then he played, we listened to a hymn, and he was inspired to do that because he didn't know that much about it, but he knew that if he could bring the Spirit, that was the most important thing, because the Spirit tested. He didn't need to say anything. And I didn't need to ask anything. But what I did from years on after that is I started researching it myself, not in a negative way, in a positive way. Because I knew now, from then on, I realized that I was going to be a, spokesperson involuntarily for that very thing. Because when I'm going to conference and I walk across the street and I see those protesters, whenever they just look at my face, that's the first thing they come out with every time. And I'm like, it's getting old, people, man. It's getting old, man. You know what I mean? But here's one interesting thing. It was like, a lot of times I think about that and I think, look, there's been many times in my life where I've received little bits of testimony of certain things. Like, whenever it talks in the scriptures, people always hit us with that. Oh yeah, but it talks about the skin of blackness in the Book of Mormon and stuff like that, and about how anyone that's cursed receives the skin of blackness, and that they were sitting on the fence. I said, well, you need to read it properly. Wherever it says skin of blackness, look at the footnote, because in 1971, the footnotes were given to us by our leaders, and if you read it properly, it will tell you what it really is. The skin of blackness, if you look on the footnotes, wherever it says it in 2 Nephi and a couple of places, it says spiritual darkness. So when the Lord cursed people with blackness, he cursed them with spiritual darkness because they left the church, not because they were black. All right? But the other thing as well is that when a lot of times when, this whole priesthood thing about why, the blacks weren't receiving, the priesthood until 1978. One thing I like is that when Bruce R. McConkie said, forget everything that we had said before that. You see, because when you're not sure about something, you might either make something up or you need to just say something to get people off your back. Just that, And so there was a lot of different myths that came through, the church. And they said certain things, what I mean? Because they didn't know and they just wanted to just keep things sweet, So some things were good and some things weren't, good. But that's why I love that part where it's the Bruce R. McConkie after 1978, where all the press was like, well, but I thought you guys said that blacks would never receive the priesthood, or that they were sitting on the fence in the pre-existence, or they were cursed, or this and that. And then Bruce R. McConkie said, forget what we said before the prior revelation of 1978. We have now been enlightened by a prophet of God. All that matters is what is happening right now. And I love that, because that to me says, guess what? All right? Yes, we are a church. This is with perfect principles, but we are not perfect. We are not perfect. And that to me gave me an even stronger testimony and love for this church, for my faith, for my church that I belong to, because they were willing to say, forget about it. Forget about the mistakes and the things that we said. We said that we spoke with limited knowledge. This is what he said. We spoke with limited knowledge. And he was even referring to his leaders, because we're not always perfect. But then he says, but just remember what has happened right now. That all people from all walks of life have the priesthood. If they want it, they know what they need to do. One thing I want to say, if there's any people who are having an issue with this in the church, okay, please don't. I am black. I should have an issue more than anyone else. But I just want to tell you that, and here's an interesting experience, and this is something I have read personally, and I have spoken to a general authority. Actually, no, I lie. A general authority's wife about this, because we had the same experience. And it was when we were on the Tabernacle Choir tour. This was last year. And we went to the Jackson County, Missouri, and we went to they took us on a tour to the RLDS church. What is it? The Community of Christ now. And we went to the temple there, and the temple obviously is different from, our temple. People go in there, and it's just, I guess it's kind of like a church.
It's open.
Chapel, it's open, but it's also like a museum. So it had all the things that Joseph Smith, his armor and all that type of stuff. But I was looking at this picture, and in this picture, it was Mormons. They were being shot, and they were running away. And it was the extermination order, I come to find out, when the Mormons were being kicked out of Missouri. And I remember I was with this particular wonderful sister who's a general authority's wife, and she said, what is that? What do you see when you look at that? What does that mean to you? And I said, I really don't know, but I just have this feeling about it. There's something that's going on in me that just feels really strong and powerful. And she said, that is the extermination order. That's when they were kicked out of Missouri. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, I said, I know why they were kicked out. Because I'd read something. one of the reasons why, not the reason, one of the reasons why the Mormons were kicked out of Jackson County, kicked out of Missouri, was because Joseph Smith was about to run for presidency, right? If you remember that. He was running for presidency to be a president of the United States. And guess what one of his platforms were? He said, if I become the president of the United States, Joseph Smith, he said, all blacks will be free. Now you got to pay attention to this. In those days, okay, blacks were property. They were making money for you. They were property. That's like saying, so what you're saying is like, if I become prophet, all you guys will lose money, because that was how they were making money. You know, with the crops and the farm and everything and the slavery, for good or for bad. And so this is what I'm saying. People are ripping on my church, okay, saying that we are a racist, or we don't allow blacks to have the priesthood. Well, go back to the Catholics, okay, in the very time, in the 1960s, Presbyterians, okay, Methodists, blacks equally, they weren't allowed to hold office in their churches either. So why are we getting the rap? And here's the thing as well, in 1978, there was an official statement that was given to the world that says this is not going to happen anymore. Well, I always say to people of other faiths when they rip on me, I says, has your church, where's the written word that says that you've stopped or that you've apologized for that happening? I don't see it. We're the only faith that's done that.
You know, it's a real testament to the fact that this is a living church,
Yeah.
and that the Lord will enlighten us as He will,
Yep.
line upon line, precept upon precept.
Yeah.
And really enjoy your input on that.
Thank
and
you.
hearing your testimony about it.
Thank you.
For any of you who are just joining us, we have Alex Boye on Why I Believe today, and it has been a great opportunity to hear your story, your conversion story, some of the stories that have helped you make decisions in your life, and how the Spirit has affected you. Would you mind, to end up our program today, would you share your testimony with us?
Absolutely.
All of those who are listening.
Absolutely. The church is true, and it's been a great blessing in my life. I'm grateful for two faithful sister missionaries that didn't give up on me, and that gave me the knowledge of who God and Jesus Christ really were. And I know that's true. I've never doubted it since that day. And I know every time I've followed the commandments, whether it's in the scriptures or the Strength of the Youth pamphlet or the ensign, and my leaders, it's always, things have always gone good for me, even when things were bad at the time. It's always gone good. I know that this is the Lord's church, and I believe strongly in the scripture that says, as a man thinketh, so is he or she, that we become pretty much whatever we think about most of the time. And if we think about things of God, if we think about scriptures, if we think about Christ, and if we think about spiritual things, that we will become spiritual people, and that we will be blessed to have the Spirit with us. And when we have the Spirit with us, we can accomplish incredible things. The Lord wants us to succeed. He wants us to succeed, and I think it's easy to forget that. He wants us to succeed at everything, whether it's in our school, whether it's in our careers, as fathers, as mothers, as young men, as young women. He wants us to succeed and to be the best ever, and He's given us the tools. All we need to do is believe it. All we need to do is just believe what the Lord says and believe in His power. I believe that Jesus Christ, He honors the words that we speak. If we say to ourselves, I can succeed in this thing, our Savior Jesus Christ will honor those words. If we say that we are nobody, or we can never accomplish this thing, or that so-and-so's better than us at this thing, or more pretty, or more beautiful, or this and that, guess what? Those words will be honored. Because as a man thinketh, so is he or she. So we become whatever we think about and we talk about. It becomes honored. So whatever we talk about can become a blessing or become a curse. That's why it's so important that we don't put people down, because those words are very, very powerful, and people will believe it. And that's why it's even more important that we raise people up, that we build people, that we all edify each other, and that once we're all edified, we can glorify our Father in heaven. And I want to just leave my testimony that I know that the Book of Mormon is the Word of God. And Joseph Smith was a prophet of God. And I'm grateful to know that we have a prophet that lives in this day and age. His name is President Monson. And he leads and directs this church. And this church will never, ever, ever fail, because Jesus Christ is at the head of it. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alex.
Thanks, Rick.
You've been listening to Why I Believe on the Mormon Channel. Today we've had the great opportunity of talking with singer Alex Boye. Again, thank you, Alex, for being with us today.
Thank you.
To share your story with the Mormon Channel, email us at radio@ldschurch.org. For more information on this program, visit our website at radio.lds.org. Thanks for listening.